Good evening all. So we have come back with a very interesting topic, and I think it affects people across the globe. What does the Arab play, or maybe sometimes you can refer to it as what does the world play in 2018? And I think it's a very general question because sometimes playing games is associated with a particular age rather than with a particular nationality. And on this topic, I shall talk. So games actually start with someone start playing games when he's a young kid. He has a lot of free time, a lot of leisure time. He spends playing a game with his peers. It could be alone or could be with his relatives, or it could be with his neighborhood friends and so on. And then sometimes it grows up with him. He have become occupied with work, then less play full time, but more work time. But sometimes he still play some games when he interact with his friends or interact with his peers. Then you have what people play at a retirement age. They have a lot of time. Sometimes they spend their time playing, sometimes they are not. So let us start with the last category on what does old people do with their time in terms of playing games. I don't think that old people play much games. I think they spend a lot of their time watching TV, and they would be enjoying a TV show, and they'd be enjoying on what's coming on TV and so on. So old people from different categories, I think they enjoyed watching TV more than anything else. But what kind of games they would play? I think they would play three kinds of games, and I talk about Arabs and Arabs who I have interacted with somehow. So we talk about people who play cars and cars like it's very famous. You have these 52 cars and four different kinds of cars. One is hearts, one of these diamonds, and so on. And they would do different games out of these cards. Could be hearts, could be games called tricks, and another kind of games that is associated with numbers and so on. So they play cards. Then they play dominoes for sure, and they play maybe something called dice game. And dice game is like a board game where you really throw a particular dice, and you have two kind of stones, one white and one black, and you try to beat the other component by finishing your your white stones before the other component. And in order for you to be able to move these stones, you have to get particular number with the dice, and the other component will try to block your movement, and you'll try to block the movement of the other opponent. So it's basically a competitive game about it's a small strategy game, a competitive game about your luck and your mind. Of course, they can also play. Old people sometimes they play dominoes and or another kind of small games. Of course, there are more complex strategic games that some people will be playing, like chess and Go and so on. But I don't see that a lot of Arabs play those. So that's the old generation. They spend their time on TV, or they play it with their friends. They would play cards, dominoes, or maybe this dice game, which I told you about. Going back to the younger generation, to the generation that is still fit, and he is willing to spend some time playing. They are occupied by work, and I would say they would play two kinds of games. I would say they either play video games, and they spend their time doing a lot of video games. So, for example, I would play Winning 11 or PlayStation at any time. And if I play PlayStation, so I remember I still now, if I am being, if someone told me, would you like to play PlayStation, and I have time and I have the mood to do it, I would play it. So mainly because I was used to play video games when I was younger, then I am accustomed to do this when I am older. And I think this will carry on the long term. So I think old people from our generation might be playing more video games than old people now. The second game that people play, I think some games are associated with sports. I think a lot of people might play football, basketball, or any kind of sports, a little bit of jogging and so on. And maybe they can go out and interact with the kids. So that's another form of game that a lot of people would be playing. Younger generation, I think the younger generation, like kids and so on, would play a lot of video games by far. Then they will play they will do some puzzles games, and those games are losing momentum comparing with the video games and computer games, and they would be doing some small sports activities like running with their neighborhood friends, like running with their friends, or having hide and seek. These kinds of games that are very famous across different cultures, hide and seek, catch me if you can, and so on. And these football is highly popular in our region, the Middle East. So this is a quick look at what Arabs are doing. Uh, uh, maybe so. My friend here, Abdurrahman Wasf, is saying the Arabs, they lost their time because they are using social media excessively. I do think Arabs spend a lot of time on social media, and it's like any other media. They would be spending a lot of time on TV, and they would be spending a lot of time on social media, whether it was Facebook, Instagram. But I do think that it depends on the generation. Some older generation would be more inclined to use Facebook. A younger generation would be inclined to use something like Snapchat and Instagram. Personally, I think Instagram is more than fine, and you don't need a new source of media, especially if the content is the same. I wish you a great evening. I hope that was a very good introduction about what does Arab people play, and what are the trends of gaming across the globe. I wish it was useful, and I hope it can give you a perspective on things. That was my quick talk, and I shall say my greetings to everyone who has attended our talk, and I shall say salam.